On this week's Vaticano, meetings on climate change and modern slavery bring mayors from world cities to collaborate with the Vatican. The Arameans, a Semitic people, tell the story of their persecution. Musings in a Dead Language, the story of a Wimpy Kid, is translated into its 46th language, Latin. All this plus calls for greater awareness of Christian persecution in the Middle East. This and more on Vaticano.
On Sunday, Pope Francis prayed the Angelus in St. Peter's Square for the first time after his return from Latin America. In his meditation, he told the gathered pilgrims about this very trip and his experience in the 3 countries he visited.
I asked the Lord that the Spirit of Jesus, the Good Shepherd, would guide me during the apostolic visit I made in recent days to Latin America, and that allowed me to visit Ecuador, Bolivia, and Paraguay. I thank God with all my heart for this gift. I thank the people of the 3 countries for their affectionate and warm welcome and enthusiasm. And I renew my recognition of the governments of these countries for their welcome and collaboration.
After the Angelus, he greeted various groups of pilgrims who had made their way to Rome.
City mayors in the Vatican, a novelty without precedent. Pontifical Academy for Social Sciences has convened them in Rome.
We have thought of doing this meeting, which I think is the first time in the Vatican, with the mayors of the important cities, either for their importance for America or for their history. We have, for example, the mayor of Lampedusa, which is, as you know, not a big city, but a city with significance, especially for the Pope, regarding immigration.
More than 70 mayors of the world's biggest cities, together with representatives of the Vatican and the United Nations, are sharing experiences and discussing how cities can help contribute to the solution of some of these problems facing humanity.
These mayors are keen to get to work. The declarations coming out of these meetings will be useful for mayors to go back and say, I signed this, I'm keen to work, here are the next steps, we're committing to these concrete goals. These are people who want to do the work now, not committing to 2020, 2030 pledges.
The Pontifical Academy of Social Sciences sponsored the workshop Modern Slavery and Climate Change, the Commitment of the Cities, and the symposium Prosperity, People, and Planet, Achieving Sustainable Development in Our Cities, in the Vatican's Casina Pio IV on the 21st and 22nd of July, 2015.
Last week, a press briefing on a conference titled United to God, We Hear a Cry. Organized by the Vatican's Council for Justice and Peace and the Latin American Churches and Mining Network, was held in the Vatican to address the urgent problem of slave-like work in mineral mines in Africa, Asia, and South America. It was a day of reflection aimed at bringing awareness to this pressing problem.
In Colombia, in recent times, the current government has a project called Mining Locomotive, which is to bring people outside our country to develop mining projects on a large scale, because they say it is progress and development for the country. But unfortunately, experience has shown us, not only in our own country but worldwide, in places where there have been multinational corporations, in Colombia we call them the Cerrejón, that what they leave is deserts. They destroy mountains along with the flora and fauna, leave everything totally destroyed, and all they do is take the riches that we have that are unique. They take them out and they leave us a desert, a lake, a pond maybe, a dead place, and total poverty.
The Pope sent a message to the gathering in which he called for a cry of indignation and for help for the violations of human rights, blatantly or discreetly trampled on with regard to the exploitation of workers.
We as small miners were working on the hill for 500 years, and we treasure it for another 500 years to come. The multinational companies take out all the wealth in 15 or 20 years and leave only a desert. The other difference is that we, Small artisans work from the age 18, and we actually turn up to 100 years old, and we're still able to work. There are jobs for everyone. But with the multinational corporations, no. Older staff cannot work anymore. So that's the difference. What they can do in one day with a large machinery, 100 men need one day for.
Lo podrían hacer 100 personas en un día.
Welcome back. This is Vaticano.
On Friday, June 26, the World Council of Arameans, WCA, organized their side event at the UN in Geneva in connection with the Universal Periodic Review of the State of Turkey by the United Nations that took place the same day. During the event, the organizers introduced a new documentary entitled Santo, A Forgotten Genocide.
Southeast Turkey. This is where, in 1915, and under the Turkish regime, a mass killing started that is known as the Armenian Genocide. But almost unknown is that in these villages, about 100 kilometers south of where the Armenians lived, another small people was massacred. Not the Armenians, but the Arameans.
And just think 1 second that each single one of us who is sitting here right now is lucky. Lucky that your grandfather or great-grandfather or your great-grandmother was able one way or another to survive the systematic destruction of our people. That's why you and I are sitting here today.
After watching the documentary, some event visitors had questions.
How do you articulate a political position? Because you're facing a very serious situation, and that's extremely serious. And that needs to be highlighted in the world media, you know.
It's very difficult for us to articulate a position without offending any existing member state, of course, obviously. We desire a constructive dialogue with the Turkish government, and we also realize that it takes time. But we always try our best to reach out to our Turkish friends and always try to touch their hearts and try to reason with them and try to explain them why it is important for us today, 100 years later, that this genocide is being acknowledged.
Since we have the discussion right now, the public discussion about the genocide, about the recognition about the genocide 100 years ago, there is a new debate, there's even a new acceptance of taking in the information and spread them. So this is actually where we are jumping on the train, as you can say, and try to give information where we can, because this is what people want to hear. They want to hear, or they want to get the information from people who are involved or have been involved in the process. And this is what we are working for.
In spite of being ignored, criticized, accused and often being silenced, Johnny Meso, the president of WCA, keeps his positive attitude. He is a man with a vocation.
There is a deep connection between our people and Jesus, because our mother tongue was Jesus' mother tongue. Our Aramaic language was the second language of the Bible, it's the second language of the Old Testament. Books like Daniel and Ezra are written for a great deal in Aramaic, and the New Testament is full of Aramaic words, sentences, phrases. Just recently, Pope Francis, he acknowledged the Armenian Genocide, and the Syriac Orthodox Patriarch, with I think a large delegation of our bishops and also other patriarchs, the Syriac Catholic one and others, they went to the Pope and also asked him to also remember us in his prayers and also acknowledge not just the Armenian Genocide, but also the genocide of the Arameans or Syriacs.
After 3 weeks of intense efforts to protect and strengthen the promotion of human rights, on Friday, July 3rd, the 29th Human Rights Council sessions came to an end. Human Rights Council President Dr. Joachim Rücker gathered journalists for the last update before the final hours of meetings. He stressed that much had been achieved in the past sessions.
Out of the 24 that have been adopted so far, 18 texts have been adopted by consensus, and that is 75%. I think that's a good figure, because it shows you that we are aiming at consensus if at all possible. As I always say, as much consensus as possible, as much voting as necessary.
One resolution in particular drew much attention. Agenda item number 7
is adopted.
The UN Gaza report condemning Israel for its assault on Gaza in 2014. For the first time, the European Union voted in favor of the resolution that demands accountability in Palestine.
This is the position of the Holy See that has, a few days ago, signed an agreement, a comprehensive agreement with the state of Palestine, and as a sign, as a will to cooperate and contribute to a peaceful solution of the various conflicts in the Middle East.
Only the United States voted against it. A great variety of issues were subject to resolutions that were approved, such as the human rights of migrants, the right to education, and the non-discrimination against women.
I think even this topic that sometimes go into an extreme position by claiming the right for any woman to decide on an abortion, but in general, this concern for the equality between men and women is a good, positive step forward. So on balance, I would say that it's a slow-moving process, the defense of human rights, but with insistence and patience, and by insisting on the right values that should sustain the claim of rights, there is a chance to make a big improvement in the life of the world today.
According to the president of the Human Rights Council, Dr. Joachim Rücker, the key is not only the adoption, but the following up, the implementations and results on the ground. Friday the 3rd, not only in the Human Rights Council's final session, but also outside, was one of the hottest days of July in Geneva.
Jeff Kinney's book, The Diary of a Wimpy Kid, was read over 20 million times upon its first release. It was a New York Times bestseller, won several major awards, and was translated into 45 languages. Now it exists in another, unlikely language, Latin.
The story is exactly the same as the original book, which has captured the hearts of so many, not just young readers, but also adults. And it was basically decided that because the book had become in a very short time a classic, that at least in the publisher's mind, it should be also offered in a classical language like Latin. So a very modern book, a story of a junior high school or middle high school aged boy, and told in a Latin which is both traditionally classical but also very new in much of the vocabulary that had to be used to tell the story.
Rendering a book like this into what some call a dead language has its challenges and requires special creativity.
In some cases, it wasn't possible, and the experience that I had in trying to come up with a joke, especially idiomatic jokes like a knock-knock joke or something like that, we had to completely change it. And in fact, we used on one occasion a very well-known and traditional Latin joke, which plays on the first word. It's an alliteration with M, so it's mori, mari, meri, and it goes on with all these four-letter combinations. And most Latin readers who are in the Latin world will recognize the joke right away.
Monsignor Gallagher had the chance to give the first of 200 copies of a limited edition to Pope Francis himself.
Pope Francis was very happy to receive the book. He was not familiar, as far as I could tell, with the story, as far as he had told me when I presented it to him. So when I told Pope Francis the story of conversion that takes place in this book, he was very interested, and I could tell he was interested to read the story. He was excited that it existed in Latin. He's a great supporter of Latin, obviously, as the head of the church whose official language is Latin. And he also has a personal interest in education and making sure that young people learn well and learn Latin well. And I told him immediately that the initiative to produce this book was primarily to help children and young people to learn Latin. Because in learning Latin, they become better human beings, and they learn virtue, they learn discipline, and the book was geared toward that kind of an audience.
By translating it, Latin was revived and came back to life, since new words had to be invented.
I can think of times when I had to come up with a term that didn't exist, surprisingly, because the Latin vocabulary is already so rich, even with modern terms. And I remember, for example, there was no prior word for heavy metal music, this subgenre of rock music. And the genre of rock music has had a Latin expression for a while, this musica vertendo et notando, meaning to basically roll and to rock is the two motions. And, but there was no term for heavy metal music, and so I discussed it with friends and people who were really into contemporary Latin. And in the end, it was just to come up, just best to come up with something like musica metallica gravis, which is a literal translation, because even the English is, you know, not intuitive as far as what the meaning is. It seems to apply well to this kind of music, so why not just use a more or less a transliteration, more or less what we would call a transliteration of the English. So things like that were fun.
The book will be released in English-speaking nations in August and can be bought in shops and online.
Welcome back. This is Vaticano. In the heart of the Vatican lies the German cemetery of the Campo Santo. Inside its walls is a special institute for research founded by a German journalist at the end of the 19th century who was keen on defending the Catholic Church against the secularization by the state, Joseph Goerres.
He was a supporter of the new movement for freedom. He later became more skeptical and discovered the negative sides, especially for the Church and Catholicism. Therefore, he worked in the defense of the Catholics and encouraged them to make their voice heard. He became a journalist, if you will, and founded newspapers, and then he became active in the political sphere and worked as a professor for history.
For everyone in Rome, this place can be a refuge for researchers, away from the noisy city, right by a quiet green area.
The Roman Institute of the Society of Goerres primarily works in researching the history of the Church and Christian archaeology, so historical and archaeological research. But we from the Institute also see ourselves as a kind of a bridgehead for the whole Society of Goerres that is situated in Germany, that can collaborate with us in their interest. Members in the Roman Institute can be everybody. Everyone can become a member in the Roman Institute that has their domicile in Rome or one of their domiciles in Rome. We focus on Rome. All academics or those who understand themselves as academics can become members if they live in Italy. They can come from all nations, Germans, Americans, French, English. That does not matter. If they're here in Rome, they're cordially welcomed.
The Institute offers the opportunity for publishing articles and is busy organizing events for researchers and historians.
We have a library that we can offer, not to forget talks and conventions, so that younger academics as well as established ones can come here and present themselves. We have a journal in which we can publish. I think that is a lot of attractive offers.
Following in Goerres' footsteps, young students can come here and prepare themselves to be ready to dialogue with the modern secularized society.
ليذبحون كما ذبح كل العراقيين. ذبح الشيعة والسنة والمسيحيين والتركمان والشبك. 72 حملة إبادة جماعية على اليزيديين، والآن تكرر في قرن 21. نساؤنا تسبى كجرايا جاريات وتباع في سوق الرق. انقذونا انقذونا باسم الإنسانية، تنقذونا.
I think the biggest disease in our society is the people doesn't have immunity. Everything becomes normal. Slaughtering people, cutting the heads of people. The first time shocked, but the third time becomes normal. And this makes me angry.
Kill Christians, they destroy their properties, they drive them out from their ancestral homes. They ask some to convert to Islam, and those who refuse to convert either killed or sometimes driven away from their ancestral home.
This must be known by everybody in the world, because the honor of humanity is dirty now with those who are making this kind of act.
It's not as if Christians did something to provoke anyone. The simple reason is that they are being attacked for simply being Christians.
La protection de la dignité du droit est sortie quand même fondée sur ce qui est venu dans la Bible. Il y a quelque chose de très profond qui est cette vie chrétienne incompréhensible à tous.
And the whole intention which the attackers have never hidden. They have said the attacks are not motivated by any sentiments but religious sentiments.
When we face this challenge, we have to think really what's important in life. It's not just belonging and positions, it's who you are, a dignified Christian. That's most important.
Au moment où on vit et on meurt de toute façon, mais on vit pour quelque chose et on meurt pour quelque chose.
Whenever there is a persecuted Christians, there is a strong church, because the persecution is just saying what a valuable treasure we have.
This is the time to stand firm, to be courageous, and to profess our faith with more commitment and zeal than we have done in the past.
Nobody denied Jesus. A girl of 7 years, she said, I'll never deny Jesus, never.
Just leaving their villages and cities and their properties and not to convert to Islam and not to accept paying the jizya, it's the first sign that they have faith, because they refuse to leave Christ and they refuse to pay al jizya because they would like to be Christians with dignity.
Quand je les voyais dans cette possibilité de questionnement, pourquoi eux, et dans la possibilité de croire que voilà, les saints sont là, c'est des martyrs. Mais le martyr a fait toujours cette semence de l'Église.
I think our Iraqi Christians are better than the apostles, because when Jesus was crucified, all the apostles went, and their chief, St. Peter, he denied Jesus. But our Christians, I think they were stronger than him. We are proud.
Afraid, yes, Daesh is just 40 kilometers from where I live. But even if they will come, now I am ready. Now I am ready, and I do believe that my people also have given me the strength that we should be ready anytime.
But to see that by being attacked the way in which we are doing, they are all indications and pointers to the fact that we are living the faith and doing our best to live the faith, and it is on account of that that the church is being attacked.
La souffrance a affaire avec la mission chrétienne, et je voudrais bien que tous les chrétiens se sentent que leur souffrance ne va pas être considérée comme rien.
And also what I admire is being a Catholic. Being a Catholic is really giving us the strength that when we know that so many Catholics and Christians are praying for us, supporting us. I am proud really of being a Catholic where we have so many people to strengthen us and always trying to tell our stories. The churches were the only one who supported Christians.
Humanity, all humanity is sinner, responsible of what's happening to those innocent children, innocent people. We must We must help.
رجاء اخوان، رجاء اخوان، انقذونا، انقذونا.